if you want to change the fluid in your transfer case in your 2011 to 2016 BMW 5 Series, or worse, if you've got a check engine light on that shows you have oil wear, it's an easy DIY task to do. Usually takes less than 1 quart of fluid, and we can do that right now. Now, full disclosure, I do have a lift, which makes this job very easy, but it's totally doable with jack stands. You want to have them up on the highest setting, and you need to have all 4 stands in place because the car needs to be level. Once you're under the car, you'll see 2 plastic splash guards. One is towards the front and one is towards the center of the car. That's the one you're going to want to remove. There's about 6 million screws on this thing. They're 8mm. Just work your way around it. There is one screw underneath that's kind of hidden that the front guard goes over, so you don't want to miss those. But you take off this large plastic guard and you just set that to the side. Once you do that, you'll expose the transmission pan. And just behind that, above this cross member here, will be the VTG or the transfer case. Now, I've included a photo here of a transfer case just so you see what you're looking for. There's this hex head fill and drain plug. That's what you're looking for. Now, there's the electrical connector for the transfer case that you're going to have to unplug. Get your hand up in there, push down on the tab and pull it out. The tab is located on the top right here where that circle and an arrow is, and you can get it just by jamming your finger in there and pushing down. Take it out of the way. Next, you'll need one of these fill plug sockets. Again, you can find this on Amazon. They're cheap. I'll put a link to it below. But you're going to want to seat that socket fully in this plug. Now, I've found the easiest way to get to this without having to remove. There are some videos that show removing this cross member. You can do it without it. I use a little crow's foot wrench and a regular ratchet. Gives me just enough clearance, just enough offset to get up in there and break that loose. And luckily, once these plugs break loose, usually you can get the rest of it by hand. You just have to be able to get into a tight spot, use the magic mechanic fingers, and wiggle that out. Once you unplug it, you'll start to see a little bit of fluid coming out. Next, you need some way to extract the fluid. I found these syringes on Amazon. They come in a 2-pack and they're really cheap. I'll put the link below. But you're going to want to get that hose up into that fill or drain hole. I like pushing it in until I feel it like hit something or bottom out. And then you just want to pull back on that syringe. I was able to take out about 3.5 full of this syringe. Now, some people keep track of what they pull out and put exactly back in what they took out. For me, on this, really all you have to do is once you get as much fluid out as you can, I'm just going to refill it with the new fluid until it starts to leak out. To replenish your fluid, you're going to want to use this F10. I get this from Amazon. It's just as good as OEM stuff. Just remember, since you just took out old fluid, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fill the syringe fully with the new fluid, and I'm going to push out some fluid just until I get some of that old stuff out of line and make sure this thing is fully primed, all with fresh fluid. When I do that, get that fluid back into that hole and just start pumping it in. And for me, it took about 3.5, 3, and maybe almost 4 syringes of this fluid until I started to see it leak out. Once I did that, I knew I had enough in there. Some people don't replace the plug. I do. It calls for it. They're cheap enough on Amazon. There's no reason not to put a new fresh plug in there. Just inspect it first. Make sure the threads are good. Make sure they're matching threads and matching size. Make sure that O-ring is there and you can reinstall. Again, you're going to need some DIY dexterity to get your hand and your fingers up in there well enough just to start this plug. Get it on as much as you can by hand and then go back in there with that crow's foot and the ratchet. Now this is supposed to be torqued down 44 foot-pounds. It's hard to get a torque wrench in there the way we're doing it here, so you just kind of have to feel your way through it. But once you have that closed up, get a rag or some paper towels, clean off anything that spilled, especially anything that might have gotten on that exhaust. Reattach this connector, make sure it's fully seated and you hear it snap in. Once that's done, reinstall the splash guard. Now, if you were just changing the fluid of your own accord, if you were doing it on your own intervals, then you should be done right now. Should be good to go. And if you really want to do this the right way, you'll close everything up, you'll run the car for a couple 100 miles, you'll come back, and you'll do it all over again. And that'll just help you get out some of the old fluid that you couldn't get the first time, that has now been mixed with fresh fluid. You can take all it out and put new fresh fluid in there, and that's really doing it foolproof. Full disclosure, I probably will not. If, however, you're like me and you had check engine light on, or you were experiencing some kind of issues with your transmission related to the wear, then you're going to have to recalibrate, and you will need some sort of scan tool to do that. I'm using a Topdon here for this, which is pretty expensive for a DIY setup. I'll put a link below to an Autel unit, which I also use, which is great and which can do this service. This here is just a walkthrough of the Topdon screen, but most scanners will have similar verbiage and similar walkthroughs. Here it showed that I had the code. It shows that there's some sort of action I can take for it, and the action is recalibration. So once your fluid is changed, you go into the scanner, you go into the function that recalibrates. It could be VTG, it could be called the transfer case or transfer box, but it'll go through the steps, it'll run the car, it'll do whatever the hell it does, and then your check engine light will be off and you'll be good to go. I like making these videos to show people how easy it is to do some of these things on your own and to save a ton of money doing it. I'll put links below to the tools or the products I've used. If you're interested about that lift, I will be making a video on that, so check back soon. And if you use my links, I will earn a whole 17 cents.